Hi everyone. Hopefully Google Classroom is working today because it was having trouble yesterday. Today we're going to talk about the beginning of Islam, which is basically about the life of Muhammad. So you can open up your lecture and we're going to talk about some things that you might already be familiar with and some things that you might not know. All right, so to start with, I like to start with the meaning of Islam, the actual word. Islam itself means voluntary submission to God, and Muslim is one who surrenders to God. Okay, so when we talk about the religion and the people who follow it, it's a little bit different than other religions such as Judaism and Jews, and Christianity and Christians. And I think it's an important part. Originally, the religion was referred to as Mohammedanism, with the followers being Mohammedans, but they decided to change it for a very important point. When it comes to Islam, the religion itself is very much about how the individual connects with God. There isn't a person in between, and there is no distinction between the mass of the religion and your individual faith. When you talk about things like the Christian Empire, and you look at the history of the Christian Empire, you know it's quite a bit different than what the actual following was. And that's also interesting because when you look at the Christian Empire under the Holy Roman Empire, you see an empire that started very small, and religion kind of fell into an empire that was already there. Whereas with the Islamic Empire, where the terms are very much not about the mass, but it is about the individual, it actually starts more as a very quickly growing empire. So that's a little information about the terms Islam and Muslim. So now let's talk about Muhammad. So Muhammad was born in 570 CE. I forgive the pronunciation, but he was born as Abu al-Qasim Muhammad ibn Abd al ibn Abd al-Muttalib ibn Hashim. I did my best. Ibn actually means son of. So there's actually 4 different names in there. The last name, Hashim, tells you his tribal name. Okay. So when you hear things like names from other areas like Erickson, you know it's the son of Eric. Or if you're Irish and it's O'Grady, it means the grandson of Grady. Same thing here. So when you hear Ibn, it is the son of. Prior to becoming the Prophet Muhammad, he was a little famous. He was known for placing the black stone in the Kaaba, which is the black box that Walker was very interested in learning about. So this is an ancient relic. The building itself, and the story is that it was being renovated, and there was a very important black stone that was considered a religious relic that believers believe is from the time of Adam and Eve. And it had been taken out for renovations, and there was an argument over who would get to put the black stone back into the eastern side of the Kaaba. And the argument goes that everyone was fighting, and finally someone says, you know what, fine, whoever is the next person to walk through the gate, they can decide who's going to put it in. And who is the person who walks through the gate next? Muhammad. And he actually chooses to take a handkerchief and have the stone placed on the handkerchief, and each of the 4 tribes carry it with him to the place, and he will be the one to place the black stone. So this is prior to his religious journey, but is still heavily included because obviously you're going to have direct connection to Muhammad at this religious site. So that happened when he was about 35. About 5 years later, when he turns 40, he's going to have a religious vision. Basically, he's going to go meditate in a cave that he had gone to many times before. He had gone on many meditation journeys. This time, he is met by the Archangel Gabriel with messages from God, and will basically become the next prophet in the line. He's considered to be the seal of the prophets, which means in most versions of Islam, not all of them, but most of them, Muhammad is not only a prophet of God, he is the last prophet of God. There will be no others. The only thing that will happen at the end is God coming back to the people. Okay. So he creates this following very quickly, and a lot of people have issues with it. He's persecuted for a lot of his beliefs. There being only one God in the area of Mecca where he was at that point. You had a lot of the Arabian gods still very popular, so that went against it. He also argued a lot for racial equality, where there was a lot of tribal conflict. So again, many issues. He'll eventually have to flee Mecca for Medina. It's called Medina today. Back then it was Yathrib. That movement is considered the beginning of the Islamic calendar. So if you know anything about the Islamic calendar, you know it's different dates and different proceedings. That's considered the starting point of it. When he gets to Medina, he will set up the Constitution of Medina, and that's kind of where you see the real beginning of the empire, in the sense of it is not just people believing in one item, it is a governmental system. He will stay in Medina for several years, but he will return back to Mecca with the conquest of Mecca in 629 CE, and you'll see the full establishment of the Islamic Empire out of Mecca from there. Shortly afterwards, he will pass away. When it comes to the death of Muhammad, there are a couple things that lead up to it. The biggest will be completing what is called the farewell pilgrimage. It was the first and only Hajj, which is that major pilgrimage. We'll talk about the 5 pillars next class, but some of you are already familiar. He had completed 2 Umrahs before, which are minor pilgrimages, but this was the big final one. And we also know that he set a lot of precedents during that pilgrimage, the biggest of which is wearing the ihram for the pilgrimage, which if you look at images of the Kaaba and you see how everyone's wearing white, that's the basic Shi outfit. You can Google it right now. I spelled it for you. And he applies it outside of the city. So that concept of you need to cleanse yourself before finishing your pilgrimage. So he does a pilgrimage. He becomes ill. It was most likely Medina fever, which was going around at the time, not coronavirus. And it was also that mixture of mental and physical fatigue. He was tired, and he got sick. He will die on June 8th, 632 CE, and he'll be buried in his wife Aisha's house. The image that you see on the bottom of the slide is actually the monuments that exist today on where Muhammad will be buried, as well as a couple of his very close followers. I believe Abu Bakr and Ali are buried around there, and also an empty tomb for Jesus to, when we'll talk, not next class after, about some various Islamic apocalyptic end of the world images, which will include that. Okay. All right. So after his death is when we see the major issue that comes up in Islam today, which is the division between the 2 great versions of Islam. You've hopefully heard of Sunni Islam and Shia Islam, sometimes called Shiite. So it's basically very similar in beliefs. You'll notice that the first 2 bullets are the same. So before his death, Muhammad announces that his son-in-law, Ali, would become his successor. His son-in-law, Ali, was married to his daughter Fatima, who was his only surviving child. He had many children, but she was the only one who survived into adulthood and had children of her own. And Ali was her husband, he was also a distant cousin. So there was a familiar bloodline there. When he makes this announcement, his father-in-law, Abu Bakr, Muhammad's father-in-law, Abu Bakr, pledges his allegiance and says that, yes, we'll follow it. Okay, and then the split's going to happen. So basically what happens is after Muhammad dies, the Sunnis believe that Abu Bakr should take over because he is one of the real advisors of Muhammad and has been involved in running the actual Islamic Empire. The Shias believe that Ali should have been given control of the empire because he was the one picked by Muhammad to be the leader. And that's where you start to see the division between, is it about being a political leader or is it about being a religious leader? There are varying versions of Sunnis who would argue that you could have Abu Bakr as the political leader and maintain Ali as the religious leader. And there are versions of Shia where they say it's just one and done. You can't have different leaders. He said Ali and it should be Ali. The order that it will go in will eventually lead to Ali becoming the leader. And we'll talk more about that when we learn about the early caliphates. And a big misconception of non-Muslims when they read that fact and they say, well, if they wanted Ali to be the leader and eventually he was, then what was the problem? I'm telling you right now, the problem is that it's about why the leader was chosen, what was that qualification. In Sunni, the leader is the one who just succeeds Muhammad and is the new leader of the empire, whereas in Shia, they argue there needs to be that bloodline, there needs to be that connection to Muhammad. You see examples of this in modern-day Iran. In Iran, their majority is Shia, and they have a supreme leader of Iran who's considered the great leader, the imam, but he's also just a placeholder. So if there was to ever be the actual descendant of Muhammad to arise based on the revolutionary constitution in Iran, that person would just get control of the country and the supreme leader would be expected to step down because it's about the bloodline. So that division starts right after his death. It is maintained through today, and you see a lot of conflict based upon that in terms of the different tribes that will develop. Overall, if you look at Islam as one religion, it is the second largest religion in the world today. It has 1.8 billion followers. There are 50 countries where the majority of the population identify themselves as Muslim. It is a strong and predominant religion. The last slide I do to illustrate that there are many different groups within Islam, just like there are in many other religions, and it is important to recognize that because while you may have major foundations that are the same, each different group might have their own different beliefs, and it's very important to understand when people talk about stereotypes based on any type of religion that it's never that simple. Okay. All right, so that was our lecture for the beginning of Islam. You are going to do an assignment called Religion in the Middle East. You're going to look at a map and you're going to answer 2 questions. Email if you have questions about those questions, and then you're going to do the exit slip. I apologize that the exit slip wasn't attached for your last class. There have been some issues with Google Classroom, or I just forgot. I don't really know because everything went down the drain yesterday for Google Classroom. Hopefully it's back. So what I would like you to do is do the exit slip for today, which is very simple, multiple choice. Just do it. It'll take you 3 seconds. And then go back to the exit slip for 325, which I have added back on. And you should be able to do now. Okay? And then we are all good for the day. I hope you all are surviving quarantine. Check in with you later. Bye.